That glorious day is here. Pitchers and catchers reporting. We finally made it to spring training. Now, what about those Rangers catchers? What do the Rangers need from them? What should they expect from Jonah Heim and Kyle Higashioka? Talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Paddock, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Paddock. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about pitchers, catchers, reporting. One of the best days of the year. It is finally here. It is a top 5 day for me in all of the baseball calendar. Not my favorite moment. It's definitely up there, though. I'd say number 5 moment on the baseball calendar for me. It's got to be the first day of the postseason. Just finding out all of those matchups, seeing all of those games happening. It is just a glorious, glorious day. Number 4, home run derby. Absolutely love me a home run derby. Number 3, pitchers and catchers reporting. Just it's so always so long from the final game of the World Series to pitchers and catchers reporting. So much happens in between it, and it gets to a point, usually for me around the middle of January, maybe even early January, where I start saying, okay, all right, come on, let's have this thing happen. Let's speed this thing up. Number 2 calendar, the baseball day is the first game of the World Series. Just an absolutely delightful experience every single year, except for years where that other team in this state is in it. Number 1 day for me is always opening day. Just the unbridled optimism for every single team, no matter how bad deep down your team is going to be. There's still that little bit of you that gets optimistic that even if the team does suck, even if your favorite team does suck, then it doesn't matter because you've got baseball back in your life. And we are getting so close to having baseball fully back in our lives. Before we talk about these catchers, just right before I started recording this, a bit of news broke. Not too much, but since it's a pitcher or a catcher, I feel like today of all days we should be talking about it. And just a lovely thing just to see all the beats tweeting at the exact same thing while they are, together in surprise. It warms my heart. It lets us know that baseball is almost here. The Rangers have signed right-handed pitcher JT Chargois to a minor league deal with an invite to big league camp. That's it. Not a whole lot of news there. Not particularly relevant. I don't think JT will end up making the opening day roster, but just seeing little bits of news, however significant or insignificant they are, warms my cold winter baseball heart, because we have officially arrived at part 2 of the calendar. There are 2 parts to any calendar. Non-baseball season, baseball season. We're there. Baseball things are happening. Now let's look at the pitchers and catchers, since those guys are reporting today to surprise Arizona. Not this spring entering as the defending World Series champs, entering this year as, a team with the chip on their backs, and rightfully so. And I don't think anybody has a bigger chip on their back about how badly 2024 went than Jonah Heim, one-time All-Star, one-time Gold Glover, one-time World Series champion. I'm sure he's hoping to add 1 to each of those tallies this year, and heck, maybe even add a Silver Slugger. But the way he hit last year, if he hits anywhere near that, there is no chance in heck he is getting anywhere near, at least not All-Star level or Silver Slugger level, because this was just a disastrous offensive campaign for Jonah Heim, and not just offensively. I mean, defensively, he fell off too. One of the things with Jonah Heim that you could always count on, no matter what, no matter how much he was hitting from the left or the right side, no matter how much power he was or wasn't hitting for, this guy was always a premium defensive catcher, always a phenomenal framing catcher. I mean, in 2023, he was in the top 3% of baseball of framing runs, and last year, it was middle of the pack. He was 46th percentile. Every other year in his career, he had been in the top 10% of framing runs. He had just been so darn good. And the only thing on his baseball reference page that's anywhere in the red is, well, he squared up the ball at a better rate than he did in 2023. He didn't swing and miss that much. He didn't strike out that much, but everything else is just bad. He did not impact the baseball. He did not hit for power. He did not frame very well. He did not, catch runners at a good rate. I mean, in 2023, he was in the top 5% of baseball of caught stealing above average, and last year he was in the 2nd percentile. I mean, he's not a guy who has an incredible pop time, but he has always been so accurate. He's not throwing the ball harder than other guys, but he is throwing it more accurately. He is getting the exchange out well, and he is timing it and aiming his throws perfectly. He was fantastic at catching runners in 2023, and last year just wasn't. I don't know what exactly happened to Jonah Heim. His bat speed even went up from 2024, from 2023. He squared up the ball in the top, nearly the top quarter of the league, the 74th percentile, but he wasn't hitting the ball hard. He wasn't barreling it up. He just wasn't at the plate. This is just a terrible year for Jonah Heim offensively, and that's why I haven't really talked about him that much this offseason, because there's not a whole lot to dig into other than he was just bad. And I don't like just kicking a guy while he's down. It doesn't feel, like a kind thing to do. But it was just so confusing, so surprising. I mean, part of it, I have to believe, had to do with, the incredibly high workload that he had in 2023. Played in 131 games in the regular season, and he caught the vast majority of those. 123 of those games he started at catcher. He played 131 at catcher, always playing catcher at some point in 2023, and then had 17 games in the postseason. Playing a whole nother month, catching every single postseason game is got to take a toll. It has to. It did. We saw it. I mean, he also caught a lot of games in 2024 where the workload was supposed to be lesser. The Rangers were supposed to have at least a competent backup catcher, and they just didn't at any point. Andrew Kisner was supposed to be an offense-first catcher, and he ended up being a defense-first catcher with absolutely zero offense. I mean, a 394 OPS. The Rangers just could not play him. He was just that bad offensively that they just cut bait. They even made a trade for Carson Kelly, and he wasn't great offensively either. I mean, not even league average. He was 18% below league average with the bat, with the Rangers, after being pretty decent with the Tigers. The Rangers made a trade there and just got nothing in return. But Jonah Heim was amongst the worst offensive regulars in Major League Baseball last year. A 602 OPS, 13 home runs, 491 plate appearances, a 72 OPS plus. 72. That's 28% below league average. Now, what do you expect from him this year? I honestly, it's hard to say. I mean, it is really hard to put a figure on what to expect from Jonah Heim. It wasn't like there was a big drop off in the second half last year. I mean, kind of. I mean, the first half wasn't great either. There was a drop off, but it wasn't like the first half was great either. In the first half of 2023, he had an OPS north of 800. He was slugging. He was a big part of the middle of this order, a big part of the reason why the Rangers got out to such a great start. He was such a big part of that offense in 2023, especially in that first half. Absolutely deserved to be the all-star starter. Absolutely deserved it. Not having anything to do with the Rangers' record of, they need this many All-Stars. He was just the best just the best catcher in the American League in the first half of 2023. Now, he fell off quite a bit in the second half, and this year he also started off strong. He's always been a strong starter. The Rangers, slow played him in spring training last year because of that heavy workload. But for the most part in his career, he has been a guy who just lights it up early on, especially that first month of the season. He's always been very, very good in the first month, and last year he just wasn't. And there was a drop-off in the second half, a 40-point drop-off in his OPS from 622 to 582 in the second half. It was just a struggle, a supreme struggle for Jonah Heim, to the point where the Rangers went and spent a decent chunk of change on Kyle Higashioka. I mean, it was not a minor investment, and it's not like Kyle Higashioka is some spring chicken either. This is going to be his age 35 season. He turns 35 on April 20th of this year. is coming off of a really, really great season, but he has been a career backup. Coming off of a career season, he only played 84 games and had 17 bombs. The Rangers would love exactly that kind of production from Kyle Higashioka, but even that, his OPS plus, I mean, he's a guy with a very bad on-base rate. He does not walk a whole lot. He strikes out at a decent rate, doesn't hit for average, didn't last year. A 220 average last year and a 739 OPS, a 101 OPS plus. So just barely above league average despite hitting home runs at a career high rate, much higher than his career rate. But what should the Rangers expect from Kyle Higashioka? How important is he to this Rangers squad? And what does the future of catcher look like from the Rangers? And what exactly does Texas even need from their catchers this year anyway? Talk about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by our new sponsor, Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fueled longer. And so, get cracking with these nuts. Check out all kinds of different versions that they've got. They got no shells. It's the grab and go, the easy, quick snack. They've also got the satisfying crack of opening each shell like it's a snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back and talking about 5 players I'm excited to watch, even though they probably won't make the Rangers roster this spring training. Now, the Rangers signed a catcher this offseason. They signed a backup catcher, spent a little bit more money than I thought they would to show that it is not a guarantee that Jonah Heim is going to start the most games at catcher for the Texas Rangers in 2025. Which felt like a surprising declaration. I mean, the Rangers were so high on him after 2023, as they should have been. He has been a good catcher for ever since he has been the Rangers' everyday starter, since 2022. And he was even mostly fine in 2021. Had some brilliant moments there, a couple of walk-off home runs after the Joey Gallo trade at the back end of 2021 when it was some of the most depressed I've been watching Rangers baseball, specifically about the baseball. I should add there. But he had some incredible moments there. He's been a part of this Rangers team for such a long time. They've been such a big believer in Jonah Heim. But this signing of Kyle Higashioka, a 35-year-old guy who's been a career backup, coming off of a really, really good season, but a season where he only played 84 games. He didn't play that much in the first half of the season. I mean, he played 9 games in April and March, 8 games in May, but really most of his damage from that career season came in a 3-month span from June through August. He hit 8 home runs in June, 3 home runs in July, 4 home runs in August. All but 2 of his home runs, a career high 17 home runs, came in that 3-month span. He had an 1131 OPS in the month of June. He was just on fire. But outside of that, those other months, it was rough. Sub 500 OPS in 17 games in September. He had in 9 games in April and March. He had a 480 OPS, a 267 OPS in 8 games in May. But in the middle of the year, he really, really turned it on. And the postseason last year, 3 home runs in just 2 postseason series. He looked very, very good in the postseason, including a massive bomb against the Dodgers in that series where I really wish that the Padres had come out on top. That would have made this offseason's discourse a whole lot different if the Dodgers weren't coming off of a World Series, and hopefully would have made the Padres discourse just a little bit more different. Maybe Kyle Higashioka wouldn't be a Ranger if the Padres were coming off of a World Series, but alas, this is the reality that we live in. And Higashioka has been a solid career backup, but this investment in him, what to expect from him? Well, for the last 3 years before 2024, he averaged exactly 10 home runs. He didn't average, I should say. He hit exactly 10 home runs every single year. every single year, fewer than 100 games. He's never played more than 100 games in a season. I don't expect him to play more than 100 games in this season. The Rangers are saying that this is going to be an equal catching opportunity. Both these guys are going to split time more evenly, and we're probably not going to see a 120 games caught season from Jonah Heim, barring an injury to Kyle Higashioka, which really hoping that that's not the case. The Rangers do have a little bit of insurance. I talked earlier this offseason about the catching position, about how the Rangers really, really need both of them to stay healthy, and they do have some insurance. They signed Tucker Barnhart, a longtime career big leaguer, has 2 Gold Gloves in his career, just offensively not very good, but he's 34 years old. He hit 173 last year with Arizona, a team that had done a good job of getting the most offense out of their players. And if he's was hitting that poorly with Arizona, it's probably not going to be that much better, if it's going to be better at all, with Texas. So you're really hoping that the Rangers don't have to go down into the depth there. But in terms of the future of this catching situation, I mean, Higashioka is here for probably 2 years as a mutual option for a third year. I don't know if that's going to be picked up. I forget if the option for next season is a player or a team option, but Higashioka is probably going to be here for a couple years. And Jonah Heim, he's heading into his age 30 season. This is, when catchers start to fall off, and he has caught so many games. I mean, that workload, it does a toll. It takes a toll on your body, and offensively, that's why expecting really almost any offense from catchers feels kind of foolhardy these days. I mean, you'd like them to be, competent offensively. That's why guys like Cal Raleigh, guys like Adley Rutschman, guys like JT Realmuto, guys that provide premium offensive and defensive value are just guys like the Contreras brothers. They are just very, very rare to find that kind of a catcher to put up consistent offense year in, year out. Heck, even Realmuto's offense is falling off a bit lately. Heck, even Adley Rutschman's offense fell off quite a bit last year, and he was the chosen one. I think he'll bounce back and be a pretty good offensive catcher this year, but still, expecting consistent offensive performance from just about anybody is foolhardy. It is such a difficult thing to do, and the Rangers have Jonah Heim under contract for another couple years. This was his first arbitration season, so he's got 2 more seasons of team control after this. But I don't know if he's going to be the Rangers' everyday catcher come 2026, even at the end of 2025. And you look on the horizon, there's not a whole lot of catching prospects in this Rangers top 30. You have Malcolm Moore, who's universally a top 10 Rangers prospect. Pretty much everywhere has him around top 5. He was the Rangers' first round pick last year. He is still quite a ways away. He's played 20 games, 25 games of minor league baseball in his career. He looked fine there. He's a bat first catcher. There are questions about the glove because he's a catching prospect, and there are always questions either about the glove or the bat. If you have no questions about your glove or your bat that you could be a big league regular, then you're probably a top 100 prospect, if not a top 30 prospect in all of baseball. Moore is still quite a ways away. There's a lot of rave reviews on him, but he's a catching prospect. He's a prospect. There's volatility there. There's a lot of it. And the only other guy who's on pretty much anybody's top 30 Rangers prospects that's a catcher is Jesus Lopez, coming off of a not great offensive year last year, but a decent showing. He's still very, very young, still quite a ways away. Born in 2005, so he is going to turn 20 years old this year, which makes me feel so incredibly old. But last year, a 657 OPS, playing in 55 games for the Down East Wood Ducks. Only played in 13 games in the Arizona Complex League the year before that. The year before that, he played in 38 games. His first year of any kind of professional baseball, had a 768 OPS in those 38 games. Had an OPS north of 1,000 in that very, very small sample size in Arizona of 13 games. Last year, 55 games, 650-ish OPS. Held his own. And not a hugely offensive league, but him being 19, playing full season stateside ball at 19 as a catcher is indicative that the Rangers believe in him, but that's still a long long ways away, even more so than Malcolm Moore, even more than Malcolm, if you will. But what does the Rangers offense look like with these guys at catcher? What does this offense need from them? And what does the team in general need from Jonah Heim and Kyle Higashioka? Talk about that and more right after this. Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. We're back with one final episode this week on a Friday talking about, I'm not exactly sure at this point. Maybe we'll talk about the Vandy boys. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about this Rangers franchise in general. But we today are talking about catcher and what do the Rangers need from their catchers this year? Well, offensively, no matter who is catching in a given game, it feels pretty sure that they're going to be hitting ninth in this lineup, whether it's Jonah Heim, whether it's Kyle Higashioka. On an average day, they are probably going to be hitting last in this order. And offensively, the Rangers needed a lot from Jonah Heim in 2023. When Jonah Heim was humming, when he was going, I mean, he was so great in clutch situations in 2023 with runners in scoring position. He was hitting like a monster. He was hitting for power. He was putting together quality at bats from the left side, from the right side. He was just so darn integral in this offense in 2023. And last year, the Rangers needed more from him. They needed more from everybody in this offense than they were getting, outside of Josh Smith and Corey Seager post healing from injury, post mid-May, when he was actually fully back to himself, fully rehabbed from that surgery, and looked like the Corey Seager that we all know and love. But Jonah Heim, they needed a lot from his bat, and last year, because they didn't add to that offense, because they didn't add an extra bat or two to kind of supplement themselves from the regression, the Rangers thought they had a decent backup in Andrew Kisner who would help take a load off of Jonah Heim, help him be fresher for the duration of the season, so that he didn't have a massive offensive fall off in the back half. And remember those 6 weeks in August, not only was Josh Jung hurt, but Jonah Heim was hurt as well when the Rangers went into that absolute tailspin in the back half of August after a brilliant start to the season and a fantastic start to the month of August. There was a 3-4 week stretch where it felt like all hope was lost. This Rangers offense just dried up completely. The pitching was hurt and bad. Everything was falling apart, and it looked like the Rangers might not even make the postseason. And then they got Jonah Heim back, and he had some moments of brilliance in the postseason. He was such an integral part of the game planning, game calling, things like that. And offensively this year, they added a lot to this lineup. Hopefully, they'll have a lot more of Evan Carter in this lineup and healthy. They have Joc Pederson. They will hopefully have an improved version of Wyatt Langford. And even if they don't, even if they just get last year's 4-win version of Wyatt Langford, that's still really solid. Having a healthy Josh Jung, adding in Jake Berger, adding some pop to this lineup. Offensively, there's not a whole lot needed from the catching spot. If these guys combined to be around a league average OPS plus, OPS off, if they were bringing that kind of thump, that kind of power in the 9 spot in this order, they just need to be a little bit of a threat. And even if they aren't, this offense will still be just fine. One of the things that made this Rangers offense so incredibly deadly in 2023 is that from 1 through 9, there was no let off. There was no easy out. There was no surefire, okay, this guy stinks, so I can, take the foot off the gas. These pitchers were constantly in peril. The Rangers' number 9 hitter for the most of that 2023 season was Leody Taveras. And, while Leody would have his very, very cold stretches, when Leody was hot, it powered a lot of this Rangers offense. I mean, having just that extra oomph. You get to the 9 spot in the order when you're a pitcher, and most lineups you say, okay, all right, sweet. This guy is not that good. I can get him out and, get myself at least an extra out before I get to the top of this order in, whoever's leading off. But if Jonah Heim and Kyle Higashioka are, at least league average, every single bat in that Rangers order in 2023 was above league average or at least at league average. And if they can be, 5% better with stick than league average, if that's your number 9 hitter, that is really darn good. So offensively, there's really not all that much that's going to be asked from these guys. I think that having both of them hopefully healthy for the majority of this season, hopefully you're not asking either of them to catch 100-plus games, to where if this is just Jonah Heim regressing, if 2023 was unfortunately an outlier and he's not getting back to that level of offensive production, which I think he can. I really think that's in there. I don't know what was going on with Jonah, whether it was just fatigue, whether there was some other personal stuff going on, whatever derailed his 2024 season. I'm hoping that's behind him, and I think he can get back to being a catcher who's runs an OPS from 700 to 750. I don't know if he's going to have an 800 OPS for an entire season like he did in the first half of 2023. I don't know if he's going to get to the 20 home run plateau. He's been so close to it so many times, and I thought he might get to it this year, but I thought this before the year that he might be able to get to it this year, but 13 bombs, just not a whole lot of offensive oomph and firepower. And even if he does keep falling off, you do have Kyle Higashioka there. You do have that kind of supplement. Maybe the Rangers are able to get something extra out of him offensively, or out of both of these guys offensively, because these are both guys with decent potential to be decent hitters. If Higgy is your backup, it's a pretty solid backup. The Rangers had some other options to go out and get a different backup catcher, whether they wanted to bring back Carson Kelly and thought, okay, well, the back half of last year was just an aberration, or if they wanted to go and get somebody else. There were options there, but Higashioka was coming off of a great season. The Rangers paid him a decent amount for a backup catcher to be a starting catcher. And offensively, they are just kind of that added cherry, that added extra little garnish on top of what is hopefully going to be a deeply, deeply formidable offense. And so really most of what they need is defensive, is calling games, is getting back to being an elite framer, getting back to being elite at preventing the run game, working with these catchers, working with these starting pitchers, of game planning things, working with Kumar Rocker to improve, working with Jack Leiter if he gets up to the big leagues to help take that next step as a starting pitcher, working with Cody Bradford. I mean, the fact that Cody Bradford had as good of a season as he did, with Jonah Heim being below average as a framer, that's incredibly impressive on Cody Bradford. Just a side note of a guy who relies so much on pinpoint precision in location, of hitting his spots, of getting, good calls, good framing behind him, that makes Bradford that much better. When he wasn't getting that from his primary catcher, it was impressive that he was able to put together that kind of a great season with that. And I think, I'll talk more about Cody Bradford later on in this spring training, but I think he is an integral part of this team. But again, circling back to what the Rangers actually need from these guys, I think there's a lot of pressure on Jonah Heim, on everybody in 2024 in this offense, especially the guys that were having down years. Guys like specifically Jonah and Adolis, and also a bit of Marcus Semien. Right? Everybody felt that pressure to step up when this offense was going so badly. I feel like one of the things that made them so good in 2023 was trusting everybody else in the lineup, trusting that everybody else would do their jobs, that they didn't have to force anything. They didn't have to be the hero. No one person had to do the lifting offensively. And when everybody's going reasonably right, when everybody's is having pretty good seasons, it's easier to trust that. But last year, when a bunch of guys are having down seasons, when you feel that step back, when you do feel the weight of those expectations, guys tend to try harder. They tend to not trust their teammate implicitly as much as they're saying, as much as they did in the year before. Of like, okay, well, everybody else is having a rough year, so I need to step up. I need to put extra pressure on myself to be that guy to kickstart this offense, to get us back to where we need to go. And I think that he felt that pressure, and the Rangers needed more from him last year, and they didn't get it. I think this year, I'm hoping he doesn't put too much pressure on himself because, with these additions, with bringing in Joc Pederson, with bringing in Jake Berger, and hopefully getting back a fully healthy and fully actualized versions of Evan Carter and Josh Jung, and more from Wyatt Langford, and hopefully a fully healthy and fully programmed perfectly baseball robot offensive baseball destroyer Corey Seager, then there's going to be less expected from Heim and Higashioka. And when less is expected, hopefully more can be produced. Because when you have these guys at the bottom of your order, if they're even a reasonable expectation of what they've been in the past, this is going to be a darn good team. But I just hope that these guys get back to anywhere near the best versions of themselves, because if they do, my goodness, this is going to be a really freaking fun season. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.